Hi Apple fans, and welcome to another episode of the Tech Hub. Today I want to talk about how stable the Apple public betas are, which have just been released. Whenever I'm deciding if I'm going to try the betas, I always look to find out how stable they are. And really there's not a lot of guides or videos or opinions about this out there. So here is my opinion on it. Let's start the episode. Okay, first of all, I just want to briefly touch on how to sign up to the public betas. This, of course, is now absolutely free. Just head over to beta.apple.com, sign into your account, register for the betas, and then on your devices, go to General, Software Update, and then you can choose which beta that you want to install, where you can choose just the developer ones or the public beta ones. As I said at the intro, there's always a bit of a lack of people saying yes they're stable, yes they're not. So I'm gonna share with you any issues I've come across. If I think it's worth trying them out, the risk is always on your main devices, and of course you don't want to brick your devices. Now, I've never really used developer betas before. I always wait for the public beta. There tends to be a 6 to 8 week gap in between developer betas coming out and then public betas. On this occasion, they released up to beta 3. So around about 6 weeks that it was with developer beta, and then they released the public beta. For me, that's a very good sign, and often that's like Apple saying, actually, this is ready for public beta. Sure, we still give you the caveat that things might not work as they should, but ultimately it's getting more and more stable. Now, before we talk about each different OS beta, things can go wrong with betas, okay? This is the risk that you're going to take, and ultimately I can only tell you about each different type of model and the version of that model that I have and how that's worked for me. It's still, you might have the same phone and it still might go wrong for you. Now, in most cases, it can be recovered and it's not really going to brick your device. So iPhones, iPads, MacBooks, you can recover these. If you're unsure how to recover them, a quick Google, but ultimately you put them into recovery mode, plug them into your Mac, and then you can restore the original software or the most up-to-date non-beta profile. In fact, I was sent an iPad mini for me to sell and they had put the public beta on it. So I managed to revert it back quite easily. Now, the only device for me that can be bricked is your watch. So really, the only risk of bricking a device is watchOS. If it goes wrong, you have to take it to Apple to get it fixed. So keep that in mind before you install any type of beta. Now, for me, it's exciting times with any software update, and it's great if you get in the habit of public betas, because you don't then have to wait to September, October time for them to release it to the public. Now, of course, one of the big major changes is visually, okay? So and I'm not going to go into the detail of all the changes to each OS and how it looks. There's plenty of other videos out there about that. This is purely about my use and how stable these have been for me, just so I can give you a rough guide in my opinion if you're having trouble deciding if you're going to take the risk with a public beta. However, of course, the way an OS looks, because we look at it every day, particularly on our phone, it's nice. It's a fresh coat of paint. I really like it for the most part on all the OSs that have been updated. Everything just seems crisper and rounder, and it's nice to have that different visual. Even though a lot of the functionality is the same, it's just exciting to get a different change on the device that you use every single day, probably every single hour, if not every single minute of the day. So I have used iOS 18, iPadOS 18, and macOS Sequoia and watchOS 11 for the past week, and this is what I found. So starting off with iOS 18, I had no plans at all to install this on my main device. After all, I do only have one iPhone, and I didn't want it to be bricked or have any performance issues. But after trying iPadOS 18 for a couple of days, which seemed very stable, I then installed it. Now, with all of these opinions, it depends what device you're running. It can even depend when that actual device was created is how stable the public beta or any beta is going to be on it. So my device was the iPhone 15 Plus in blue. So I installed the public beta, no issues with the installation at all. Heat-wise, heat is always a good indication of how well a beta is running, and even during installation or after installation, I didn't notice any extra heat coming from the device. Sure, it was warm, but it had just done an iOS update, so that was no surprise there. Functionality here, everything worked for me. One of the reasons why you really shouldn't go for a beta is apps like your banking apps and stuff like that might not work anymore. I've had no apps not work on me. The only glitches in iOS that I've seen is there's some animation stiffness now and again. On the Photos app, at one point I was looking at my photos and then they just turned green. I then closed the app and reopened it and it was fine. Apart from that, I really don't consider that I've had any major issues with the public beta at all. So yes, I'm going to say that on my device, iOS 18 is absolutely fine, and this is my main device. Now, I did have an example happen to me. My car broke down. So this was an emergency situation, and almost straight away I realized, oh God, I'm running a public beta on my phone. I hope I can contact who I need to contact, use the app I need to use. So it was a real test of the phone. So of course I had to open the app of the recovery company. That worked fine. I had to phone them. I had to use maps and location for them to know where I was. I then had to find a garage to get to. So maps worked absolutely fine there. And everything that I used during my emergency day worked absolutely fine. So I think that was a good test of the iOS 18 public beta. Okay, next moving on to iPadOS 18. This was the only developer beta I planned to actually install. I installed it on my iPad mini 6th generation space gray 64GB Wi-Fi model. Like I said, it does often depend which model you're installing on as to how stable it is on that device, so I can only give you opinion on these exact models of how stable it has been for me. So this is the first public beta I installed this time round this year, and yeah, I used it for about a day, and then I was like, oh, you know what, I've found no issues at all. I pretty much have my iPad mini and my iPad Pro set up exactly the same way, so I use the same apps, and usually functionality wise it's the same. So I figured I would install it on my iPad 13-inch M4 in silver, and this is the Wi-Fi only model. So again, this specific model for me, and I've again, just like my iPad mini, no issues at all on this version of this iPad. I really like it. I think it's got great functionality. I haven't noticed as many animation issues like I've had, or glitches on my phone. And in fact, thinking about it, I don't think I haven't run into anything or noticed anything on my iPad, which makes me think it is a beta or feels like a beta. So for me, on my iPad 6th generation mini and my iPad 13-inch M4 Wi-Fi model, absolutely fine, and for me it's stable. Hey, moving on to watchOS 11. In fact, I've had a few bugs doing this video. I like to stream the camera. For me, that's never worked perfectly, even out of betas. But today it's been a bit, I've had to open and close it and really push for it to see. And even now I can see some delays. But for me, that function's never worked 100% anyway, but it particularly isn't working as well as it did on watchOS 10 or iOS 17. For me, watchOS, it's a nice upgrade, but there's nothing brand new or groundbreaking. There is really even a lack of new watch faces. There's a new portrait one for photos, but apart from that, I'm really quite disappointed in the lack of new watchOS faces, and it doesn't seem that different. There is a new app to do with fitness, which is to look at all your metrics in one place. I don't really use it for a lot of fitness, as you can tell, or even sleep tracking. So those new features are wasted on me. However, I've had zero issues at all, no glitches, no anything. So for me, on my Apple Watch Ultra, 1st generation, it has been stable apart from the camera app, like I said. So moving on lastly to macOS Sequoia. This is probably my favorite update. I love the new wallpapers, they look great. Not a lot of huge extra functionality. However, iPhone mirroring is a game changer. This is this year's die-hard feature. And that's the thing I've used the most. And now I've got this set up on my MacBook Air 15-inch M2, 512 gigabytes of hard drive and 8 gigs of RAM. I've really had zero issues with this public beta. This isn't my main device, although for work I do use it, and I was a bit hesitant installing it. I don't have a lot of work appointments to take my laptop to. However, for me, that's what passed the test of it's stable. Everything I needed for work worked, and I was truly happy. But going back to iPhone mirroring, it's pretty much working. There's a couple of glitches. The only thing I've had is the iPhone notifications. Sometimes you can't clear them from the notification center. You close the app and reopen it, and it seems to be fine. But I've had zero use issues. It's not bricked at all. It seemed to have run fine, and I haven't really felt any heat from the device either. And considering it's a fanless laptop, if there was an issue that was going to cause a lot of overheating, I would have definitely felt it with this. However, iPhone mirroring is the nuts. It is this year's killer feature. I'm not going to install macOS Sequoia on my main device, purely for the fact that I just can't take the risk of it going wrong at any point, just because the first version of the public beta is fine. Something might go wrong on future updates, and I'd prefer not to, because I literally do everything on here in my personal life and my work life. So I'm willing to wait until the actual release in September, October time, and still enjoy the functionality. But it's something for me to look forward to when this goes well. So let me summarize for you. For me, the public betas are worth taking the risk. It's not bricked any of my devices. I'm still getting the great functionality. I would say there's been very small glitches and stuff, enough to live with, enough for the sacrifice of trying these new devices and it feeling, let's face it, an OS update makes it feel like a brand new device. Because even if it's just a small visual change, it's just nice to have something different. The only OS I didn't talk about today was tvOS. But for me, there's really a lack of updates and features for me even to make the effort of the 10 minutes it's going to take to install it. I mean, we have Insights, okay, great, but that only works with the Apple TV app. And I do use it, but I would say I probably use Disney Plus and Netflix a lot more. And of course, we tend to use Apple TV for everything in all three rooms, so I didn't want to take the risk of bricking my device. And Apple TVs, they can be recovered, but it's a bit more of a lengthy process. But so for me, iPadOS 18, iOS 18, watchOS 11, macOS Sequoia, on my particular devices, they are stable and it is worth it. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Have you tried the public betas? How's it been for you? Have you tried the developer betas? What was that first beta like? I never saw it. Has there been a big difference in stability? Has this video helped you decide? Now, again, disclaimer, this is just my opinion. If your devices go wrong and I'm the one that's convinced you to install it, it is what it is, but your devices can be recovered. Just do not update your watch. It's not worth the public beta in case it bricks it, because there's not that much new. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Please give me a like and subscribe to me. Please follow me on Instagram and Threads at TechHubWorldsUK. I post daily as well, so hopefully see you on there. I'll see you on the next video.